In 1949, electricity came to the little valley in Orange County where our farm is located, where Joanne grew up. Because in all their lives, her parents never borrowed money. It took them 8 years to save for indoor plumbing, which happened in 1957. I asked Joanne's brother David this week if he were sure of that date, and he said, "Phil, you don't forget the year you get indoor plumbing." The old well was 80 foot deep, and the water was full of sand and mud. I was dirtier after a shower than before. The man we hired to dig our new well this past week said the new well would be much deeper, perhaps 160 feet deep, so was surprised when he hit an aquifer at 80 feet, the same aquifer the farmhouse has tapped for years. And there he found water, pure and sweet. He theorized the casing in the old well must have fractured at some point, allowing the water to be contaminated as it rose to the surface. So I called Joanne's brother again and asked him when that might have happened. 1964, he said, the Great Alaskan Earthquake. It cracked our well casing. Water never was good after that. I asked him if he was sure of that date, and he said, "Phil, you don't forget the year your indoor plumbing goes bad." I tend to agree with him. We remember our really good days and our really bad days. I remember the day I bought my pickup truck, a good day, and the day a semi-truck hauling tofu ran a stoplight and totaled it. Definitely a bad day. It turns out we had good water all along from the exact same source, just a difference in the means of conveyance. Our contaminated water journeyed to the surface through a broken pipe. Our pure water through an unbroken pipe. There's a lesson in there somewhere, something to the effect that we're all born pure and good, but depending upon the circumstances of our journey, we arrive at the current moment, either broken or whole or somewhere in between. So be kind to others, because we never know the circumstances of their journey to the present moment. Occasionally, Don Adams will send me a poem he's written for Beth Simon's writing class, which I always appreciate. I always tell Don that 50 years from now, fourth grade Hoosier school children will be reading the poetry of Don Adams. And it's good to be reminded that the best writers aren't always published, just the lucky ones. He sent me a poem this past week called "Signs on My Way Home." Away from me she walked, retreating to the green light. Behind her back in cupped hands, a cardboard sign, "Single Mom." She retreating, me approaching, hoping green would remain, so I would not see her face, nor she mine. No yellow nor red, proceeding, shortly passing fast food, another cardboard sign, help wanted, $15 an hour, flexible hours, guilt, retreating, judgment, growing, almost home, past yet another sign, not cardboard, this in lights, in front of the church where I was baptized 7 decades past. Judge less, love more. Damn signs. Judge less, love more. Why? Because we never know the circumstances of someone else's journey to the present moment. I know a man who left his wife, and I was upset about it, so made up my mind what I would say to him the next time we spoke. I even wrote a letter to him, but didn't mail it. I never send a hard letter or email the same week I write it. And then the next day he phoned me, and here was my chance. I was all ready to unload on him, but I stopped just in time. Who was I to comment on a relationship I knew nothing about? Even if his wife was the most wonderful woman in the world, I knew nothing of his parents' marriage or his grandparents' marriage or any of the other marriages that first formed his early understanding of marriage and his ability to nurture his own. We never know the circumstances of someone else's journey to the present moment. Judge less, love more. We don't know the fractures other people have experienced that corrupt and contaminate their lives, sometimes forever. This week, Joanne was telling me about a little boy at her school who has been a handful, uncooperative, unruly, unable to focus, and disruptive. And then the local newspaper came out, and the boy's last name caught Joanne's eye as she was scanning the columns. His father had been arrested for domestic violence. And Joanne wondered what that little guy had seen, had felt, had experienced. We don't know the fractures other people have experienced that corrupt and contaminate their lives. Judge less, love more. To judge is to discern the worth and value of another person. But when we do that, our judgment is always based on limited information, since we can never know the extent to which the lives of others have been fractured and corrupted. We know not the abuses or evils that have left their lives splintered and broken. And thus, the psalmist reminds us, the judgments of God are kind, for he knows our frame and remembers that we are dust. Let us enter into open worship, friends. A bit of a rough patch, and so we sat in our kitchen and shared a meal and just visited late into the evening. And while she was there, she told me about a test that is often administered to children experiencing trauma. And the test is called the Adverse Childhood Experience Test, the ACE test. And it is 10 questions, and they're yes or no answers. You simply say yes or no when it asks you what you might have experienced as a child. And obviously, the more times you say yes, the more likely it is that you've experienced this trauma and it has continued to inform and shape your life. I went to bed that night thinking how useful it would be if everyone we met had their ACE score pinned to their clothing, so that when we approach someone, we would know immediately the level of trauma they experienced as children. But life doesn't work that way, and we often keep secret those more embarrassing or painful episodes in our lives. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be so much better if we just assumed whenever we met someone that they were wearing the number 10 and that they had experienced trauma that we don't know about. And until we learn otherwise, we treat them with great compassion and with sympathy and love and acceptance. Wouldn't that be something if we just assumed that everyone had suffered and therefore deserved our compassion? That our compassion wasn't something they had to earn from us, but rather something we freely gave. So maybe that's our homework for this week. To remember that when we encounter someone, their lives are a mystery to us. Not only their triumphs and their moments of deep pride and accomplishment, but also their pains and their moments of difficulty and struggle and rejection. And so therefore we commit ourselves to assuming that everyone we meet is struggling with a demon whose name we do not know, who can only be challenged and healed by our radical commitment to act in compassion. So this week, may we be bearers of grace. May we love deeply, especially loving those whose stories we don't know.